What's up, YouTube? Filthy Casual is back. If I seem a bit down in this video, it is because of a personal loss. Um, but we're not going to talk about that. We're here to talk about hoops. Um, this is going to be about the Warriors Kings series and a little bit of a retrospective on it. I didn't really do a game by game breakdown for that series, even though I did watch every game. And I think my stance about what the end result on the series would be never really changed, but how we got there is definitely far different from what I expected. I always felt that it was probably going to be a 6 or 7 game series and that everybody was underestimating the Kings because I thought they were way better than we were giving them credit for. I still stand by that, and I think if they were playing the Suns, for example, in the first round, I think they would have won. I think they would have beaten the Suns. I think they probably would have beaten the Lakers. I don't think they would have beaten the Nuggets, but I think they were likely the second best team in as of the upper echelon of those Western Conference teams. I thought that they were consistently good, and honestly, if De'Aaron Fox maybe without the finger, maybe the Kings win this game, right? Like the game 7 was very close for most of the game. Curry kind of put the stomp on him, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I think the Kings are really building something sustainable. Um, I think the season's been a massive success for them. I think they probably shouldn't look at it that way. I think they should look at it like, okay, now it's time to go back to the grind and figure out what we're doing next year. I think they could definitely fill out the back of this roster with some stronger defensive pieces. I think they can upgrade their wing spot. Harrison Barnes, while good, has not been great. And at times when De'Aaron Fox wasn't hitting jumpers, their wing production could definitely be better. I think the Kings had some difficulty adjusting to the playoffs, not as much as I think everybody will say in hindsight or said in anticipation, because they were all saying, "Oh, well, it's hard to keep the speed up in the playoffs." I don't think they didn't keep the speed up in a game 7 because they couldn't. I think they didn't because the Warriors, and specifically Steph Curry and Kevon Looney, did an amazing job. Oh, and Draymond Green defensively, of course, limiting them. I don't think most teams have that ability. I think it is a very, very specific thing. The rebounding war being lost to Looney, like, yes, Looney's amazing, but that is definitely something that you don't expect from Sabonis, who's a very fundamental guy. Like, he's a very old school kind of center as far as, he puts a shoulder into you, he boxes out, he's got all the post moves, he's very, he does all the little, like, old school, like, catch you with an elbow, dirty shit that, Michael Jordan and Kobe did, right? Like when the guy's not looking, when the refs aren't looking, he's gonna hit you with some dirty stuff. And everybody's known this for a long time. I don't know why people were defending him so vehemently with the whole Draymond situation when he very clearly put him in like an ankle hold. I think people are just quick to assume that because of the way Draymond reacted, that it was one thing when, you know, yes, Draymond stomped on him, but let's be real, there was physicality going both ways the entire series. And given the amount of physical contact that happened over the course of the 7 game series, I'm genuinely surprised that more fouls weren't called. That being said, I'm glad there weren't more foul calls because we actually got to see the teams play and we saw a very up and down series for the, you know, vast majority of it. And that is represented in the viewership numbers. This was the most viewed series in first round history. I mean, that's impressive in its own right. And I think it had an amazing end with Curry being all time on a night where really, other than Looney, ain't nobody was on shit. I mean, Draymond was all right, but like really it was just Steph and Loon out there, and then the rest of the team sucked. Like Clay had the one 4 point play, and that was like his entire contribution, right? Like Poole was worthless. Wiggins had a good first half and then couldn't hit shit in the second half. So I think it was an all-time series for the first round. I think it was an all-time uh, thing, and it's game 7, and it was an amazing watch. Now, moving on to the next series, I'll also briefly touch on Heat Knicks. RJ had a great first half and a rough second half. The depth missing Julius Randle definitely hurt us in that regard. Um, I did kind of expect the Knicks to win game 1, and it looked like they were going to for a while. But man, Kevin Love and Kyle Lowry just they were really like the MVPs of that game. They had brought that veteran savviness, and I am interested in seeing how that is going to be maintained over the course of the series, how much their age will affect them. And beyond that, I think it's going to be a good series. I do still have Knicks in 6. As long as Julius Randle comes back and isn't terrible, Knicks in 6. If Julius comes back and is awful, then we've got a discussion to talk about. Then we've got a discussion. And I'm not saying it's outside the realm of possibility, but I do still feel strongly that it's Knicks in 6 or 7. It's one of those two. Um, I'll tentatively say 6. Okay, moving on. Lakers Warriors. Lakers Warriors is an interesting one because these teams have played each other a couple of times. If you recall, they played each other in the play-in a couple of years ago, where the Warriors lost on a not quite a buzzer beater, but a game-winning shot from LeBron from like a hash mark. He had just been poked in the eye. He's like, I aimed at the middle rim. I saw 3 rims, and he was being goofy. But it these teams have a bit of a history. Obviously, there's the LeBron Curry history, but LeBron James is older, as is Curry, and I think Curry's better at this point in their career. I think he's the better of the two players. So it's really Anthony Davis, right? Who we've got to think about. Now, Anthony Davis is a massive mismatch for the Warriors. I said this in my playoff preview. Anthony Davis is going to be a tough player for them to scheme for. Draymond loves going up against AD because it's a challenge. It's a big kind of deal when you get to go up against the player of that caliber, especially when you're a defensive player. And Draymond has done a good job on him in the past, and I think as long as he limits him to taking jumpers, that is going to be as much as possible. Of course, this is obviously he's AD. He's going to get points in the paint, of course, but when AD is hitting those jumpers, it really opens up his game, and AD has points where he's not consistent with his jumper. And we saw some of that, right? And we also saw that there are some effort issues on the Lakers as well. We saw them drop another game to a Grizzlies team that I think is really not that good, and I think was definitely weaker than a lot of people might have thought at the start of the season. And the Lakers probably should have won that series in like 5, but they won it in 6. And I think, granted, the Warriors also have those same effort concerns. Look at game 6 for them. Like the Kings series probably should have been over in 6, but it took 7. So where does this leave me? Well, I think each team is probably going to stink it up in at least one game in the series, right? I think at some point each one of these teams is going to just piss away a game because no other reason than some people aren't playing hard, right? My main concern, I think the main thing to look out for, because I think we know that we're going to get a great Steph Curry, we're going to get a great AD, we're going to get a great LeBron, we're going to get a great / good Draymond, Loon. I think those are all near certainties for this series, right? We know what those players are going to bring, and you can maybe throw in Wiggins there, but I think the main thing to keep an eye on is Clay, Poole, and D'Angelo Russell, and then Rui Hachimura. Right, those are the players that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and also you could say Jared Vanderbilt for like how if he hits any kind of perimeter shots, if they can get that kind of production from him. If Rui can be a consistent perimeter threat, which he was in certain games. And he had a great series again in round one. If he can be that, the Lakers are and if D'Lo can be a little bit more consistent because D'Lo has had bad games, bad games. And there's also the storyline with D'Lo being a former Warrior, how hard that kind of hey they gave up on me, right? They traded me for Wiggins. Granted, it worked out, so it's hard to argue with it, but there might I'm not gonna say bad blood, but there is that connection, and I think overall, if you are getting good production from Rui and D'Lo, the Lakers are going to be feeling much better about their chances in the series. And I think you could say the same thing for the Warriors with Klay Thompson and Poole. Now, Poole, I have much less confidence that we're going to get a big game out of him, right? Like last year, Poole was good for at least one big game every series. Poole averaged like less than 10 points. I mean I need to double check that, but like what were Poole's round one stats? Like they were not good. They were not good. And as I pull that up, it was atrocious. He's averaged what? Why is it not giving me the thing? He had one. I guess he did have one good game where he had 22 points, but like damn dude, like Poole did not have a good game this good round one series against the Kings, and that's kind of the player he's been all season, and that's why it's concerning to me, as opposed to players like D'Lo or Rui, who aren't being paid $100 million and aren't expected to give that production necessarily on a night-to-night basis. Klay, on the other hand, I think, while he also didn't have a great series, I'm more confident that as he's going to find a rhythm at least at some point. I'm not going to say that he's going to be as great as he was at some certain points during the regular season because I don't know if he's going to be scoring 40 at any point, but I think he has it in him. My prediction is Warriors in 6. I'm concerned about LeBron, even with the rest advantage. I'm concerned about how good he is going to be able to be all the time. He definitely doesn't have the same energy to carry you through the game and get you to the fourth quarter and then take over the fourth quarter like he used to be able to, like with the 2018 Cavs, for example, which was 5 years ago at this point. Now you're really hoping for AD to do that kind of, or Rui or D'Lo or somebody to carry you through those early portions of the game where the Warriors are, striking blows at you. And if they don't have that, I think they can fall out of these games, especially because AD likes to like ease into games. He's a second half player oftentimes, and that's really what you're looking for. The Warriors in 6 could go Warriors in 7. I'm expecting them to win one of the road games in the first two. First two on the road, right? Because they actually have home court advantage, which is a big deal for this team, which is another reason why I'm predicting the Warriors to win. I think if it was another matchup where they had just come off having to do all this road whatever and then having to go right on back to the road games, that would be tough. Granted, also they're in California again. I'm not saying that the Lakers nation isn't going to show up because it's the Lakers, right? But it's hard to feel like the Lakers are a worse matchup for the Warriors than the Kings were. I think the Kings really frustrated what the Warriors really want to do offensively, and defensively they were physical in a way that people might not have been expecting. Now, the Lakers are going to be big, they are going to be physical, but I think it's in a I don't want to say that they're going to have less heart, but I feel like the Kings showed a lot of heart over this series, and I find it hard to believe that those Lakers players are going to be able to show that same kind of thing. I also do want to give a shout out to Malik Monk, who I think really showed out this series, and I mean, he's a really good player, and I think this has probably been the best that he's been, like at all. Like he was getting to the line and a lot, a lot, and he's knocking them down at an elite rate, like 89%. And damn, like Malik Monk was crushing it. So as far as the 76er series, I don't think it's hard to say with Embiid out. Like I'm just gonna say Celtics in 6, but with Embiid out, missing games, that's really bad for them. And that was what I was worried about with the 76ers, especially with their round one uh, matchup when I saw how physical that they were being with him, especially Nick Claxton was really taking it to him. So I was definitely concerned about that, and I feel like my fears came to fruition. So Celtics in 6, I guess. I don't know. Interesting thing to point out. First time in NBA history that there is a seed represented in the second round. Every seed is represented in the second round. There's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, and an 8, which is kind of crazy. Kind of that's one that's never happened, and two that it's actually happened. That's very interesting because the fact that an 8 seed getting to the second round is so rare, that's probably why it's never happened, and I'm glad that we're around to see it. So thank you for watching this video. If you got to this point, leave a like, subscribe. It really helps. Yeah, and rest in peace, Ben Ha.